Hey there, Balanced Lady Bosses. This is Stacy, and welcome to another epic episode of the Balanced Lady Boss Show. Today, I am joined by an awesome author who has just written her way into my heart for sure, because she really gets women like me and hopefully women like a lot of you that actually listen to the show. And this is Catherine May, and I have read two of her books now, and I'm just really excited to have her on because she's actually in the middle of a book tour. And so we're going to hear all about Catherine's journey and how she became this epic writer, woman after my own heart, because you know I'm like a writer in the pod, in the making, and just kind of talk about what her journey's been like and how she has been able to express that through writing, and how her work is really geared towards helping women in this change mission of being well and loving and leading in a way that gives you life, right? So welcome to the show, Catherine. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Excellent. So far, I've actually read two of your books. I was introduced to you by another guest. I interviewed someone that actually, she's a chief science officer for a company, it's a tech company that focuses on space defense. Really cool.
Wow, and she's read my book. That's so cool.
Yes, and she actually had a kite surfing accident, and as a result got a brain injury, was in the hospital, and went through a significant winter of her own.
Right. Wow.
And
yeah.
so we were talking about her journey on the show, and she said that, you know, she read this book called Wintering. And of course, whenever anybody tells me about what they're reading or what, you know, I write it down. And so I went digging up on you. And I must say that when I read through the first couple of chapters, I teared up because I saw myself so vividly in this woman that you were talking about, which I think was you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was me. Yeah.
So tell us about your journey and how you kind of stepped into this space of sharing your story.
Oh, goodness. Well, I mean, I always wrote, even when I was a tiny child. Like, one of my earliest memories was sitting under my mum's dressing table with a notebook and pretending to do joined up writing in it. I couldn't write yet, but I was just doing little loops and loops and loops and filling pages with it. And, you know, like, I was the kid that all through my summer holidays, I, you know, was writing plays and, you know, poems and things like that. But I mean, obviously there comes a point when you feel self-conscious about that. I think as a teenager, I certainly did. It felt a bit of an embarrassing thing to do. And I got a bit teased for it at school. So I gave up for a long time. And then in my mid-20s, just decided really clearly that a writer was what I absolutely wanted to be. And that was a really hard journey after that, in fact. I mean, I think one of the first things I wanted to write was memoir, but that wasn't something that was being published much in the UK at the time, or anyone was talking about. So I wrote poetry and I wrote novels, and eventually got my first short story collection published. But it's taken me a long time to come to writing the thing that I always wanted to write about, which is like writing from life and trying to come to terms with that, you know, that very kind of human experience of the difficult parts of life. I always wanted to be able to express that, and I've only been doing it in the last few years. And interestingly, they're the books that people have responded to the most by far of everything I've written. So I think, you know, there's a sense that that's always what I was meant to do, really. That was always where my talent lay.
I actually like what you said, that your passion has always been about, you wanted to write for life. And I feel that that's the work that is the meaningful work, because there is so much fluff in the world right now, right? There's a lot of fluff.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily, you can attract it when you're in a certain space, but that insight around life and how other people navigate the
Mm,
space, I think is so
mm.
powerful, because that's where most persons learn. They learn from other people's journey. They feel that they can survive, or they can thrive, or they can make it, or whatever the case is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in your book, I have a question about actually, I was reading Burnout, because I got burnout on Kindle, Burning Out.
Oh,
I
did
got
you? Wow.
I
Okay.
got Burning Out on Kindle first while I was
Yeah.
waiting for Wintering to arrive. When did you
Interesting.
write Burning Out?
I wrote Burning Out when I was in my late 20s.
Uh,
So what year? God, I'm really bad at remembering years, but that was published, well, more than 10 years ago now. So
oh,
it was my first proper novel that was published with a like a small independent publisher, but like a really, they were quite trendy at the time. They've started specializing in other books now.
okay.
But yeah, that was the book, that was the novel that was the first one to come out of my head. It was the novel that I really wanted to write, and that made me want to say stuff about the world, definitely.
Yes, excellent. And at first, when I was reading Burning Out, I thought this was you.
Yeah, well, I mean, not directly, obviously, because there's some quite fantastical elements. But yeah, I think it did definitely express something about me, because when I left university, I kind of was channeled towards like quite a corporate job, which for me, I got disenchanted with very quickly and left very quickly. I just knew it wasn't going to suit me. Like, working long hours just to satisfy like a company ethos that felt like I needed to be present in the room in order to look like I was serious enough about it. It didn't feel real to me, actually. It didn't feel like it was my life. It felt like it was someone else's life.
Mm.
And so I gave it up really quickly. But the character in Burning Out, I guess I've imagined she carried on a little longer with that. And she's like incredibly lonely and incredibly isolated. And
Yes.
she's also craving something about authenticity that she doesn't really understand. She
Yes.
doesn't understand how to live an authentic life. And so she warps it, I think.
Yes. No, absolutely. I really I kept wanting to read more, because I was like, what is she gonna do? Like, is she gonna figure it out? Like, what? So that was kind of what pulled me into Burning Out, was just her. It's like,
Mm.
at points I was angry at her. I was annoyed. I was like, what's wrong with you? Like, I was going through that whole. So if that's what you're going after, you got it, right?
She
That
was
was.
a really frustrating character to write, actually. She drove me crazy. She really did. She just couldn't make a good decision, honestly.
Oh, that's good. And tell me now about your winter. And I just wanted to um, kind of. I would like for you to give a definition of wintering, even though
Mm.
it's here. And then there are a couple
Mm.
points in the beginning of the book that I think I'll read once you've given your definition, that will help
Okay.
us to kind of see the thinking. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So wintering is this idea that we all have points in our life when we fall through the cracks. When something has gone wrong and we drop out of life for a while, like we feel like everyone's carrying on without us, but we feel very frozen and very unable to like claw our way back in almost. So it's about these painful times in life. And I wanted to make a link between all the different ways that we might winter. It might come from a physical or mental illness. It might come from losing your job or your marriage breaking down. And sometimes it comes in ways that we don't fully comprehend. Like I think here in the UK, there's a lot of wintering going on, not just because of the pandemic, but because people are feeling in conflict with like close members of their family, because we've all been fighting about Brexit for so long and all of that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in the US, there's those political divisions are really strong too. Like everyone I'm seeing is feeling like life is a bit frozen over and they're not sure where to go next. And that is, in a nutshell, wintering. So the book's about how important those times actually are, how we often push them away and deny them, but how vital they are as part of the life cycle.
Yes, that's actually really spot on. And I feel that we are, as a world, all experiencing a winter together because of the
Mm.
pandemic. And I think that's what really drew me to wanting to explore this book with you a little bit more. And I'm actually going to read this line where it says, however it arrives, wintering is usually involuntary, lonely, and deeply painful. Yet, it's also inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't like that part.
It is. And actually, I wanted to talk about it as part of the very normal life cycle, that actually, whatever you do, you can't avoid wintering. Like, even if you manage to score the perfect 10 in life and got everything right, whatever that would even mean, stuff happens to you. You can't control it, and it's not within your control. And I think one of the most painful things we can go through is not actually wintering. That's like the aftermath of something going wrong. I think some of the most painful stuff is that flinch away from feeling the pain when we're trying to defer wintering or push it back or deny that it's coming for us. I think that is where the real agony is.
I agree with you, because I know that I run from winter. It's almost as though I will see it coming, I'll see the leaves changing, and then I just take off.
You're like, nope.
I'm not interested, So I think a lot of people hide in that space of, I don't want to have this bad thing happen, or let me live in a way that's a bit inauthentic almost, so that I don't have to access or acknowledge the pain that comes with wintering, which is inevitably, it's really our opportunity for transformation. That's ultimately what it is.
So true. So true.
Talk to us about your transformation that you went through, because what I loved about this was you were on a journey in wintering, and you took us on that journey with you. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so I mean, the wintering that I describe in the book came in a way, it felt rather sudden, but actually once it happened, I realized it had been coming for a long time. So I'd already handed in the notice for my job. I was running a creative writing degree at university, and I'd realized by then that I was stressed and overstretched and just constantly feeling completely overwhelmed. And so I decided that I needed to give that up. That's fine. But while a couple of days after I told my boss I was leaving, my husband fell really suddenly ill, a very bad appendicitis, like a very bad infection. And while I was sitting by his hospital bed, I realized that I'd been unwell for quite a long time myself, that I'd had like really severe abdominal pain that I'd been ignoring, and loads of other symptoms too that you're not supposed to ignore. And I was sick, I was ill, and I'd been trying very hard not to notice it. And so my GP signed me straight off work, so I didn't have to go back into this job that was clearly making me quite poorly. And so this big space opened up in my life where I had to acknowledge the change that was coming for me. And it was a huge change. I needed to adapt better to living a life that was sustainable. I was just finding being a mother and working much more than full time impossible. And I felt like everyone was coping except me. I felt like I was keeping this dirty secret that I was really struggling and everybody else was doing amazingly. And I think in retrospect that was nonsense, But yeah, and then after that, my son stopped coping at school. He became so anxious that we had to take him out of school. And that opened up like another level of wintering, really, because then we felt very isolated from the kind of parent community. We felt like we'd made a very unusual decision that loads of people wouldn't have taken, and that lots of people found a bit eccentric. And we wanted to find a way to help my son to understand that that this was like a wintering period for him, and that there was a shape to it, that he would come out of it stronger. And so my mission became to kind of support him through that too. But at the same time, that was really difficult for me because I did not want to be sitting at home with a child. I'd done that phase as far as I was concerned. So yeah, so that's the kind of, you know, that's the narrative of the book.
And now, well, before I even say and now, I want to say thank you for sharing your story in such a vulnerable way. You know, I'm actually, when I was reading your work, I realized that I think I'm afraid of that space.
That space is scary. Yeah.
I saw you like trying out different things and, you know, experiencing Christmas in a different way for the first time, and going up to Iceland to sit in the steam bath in the middle of the cold, and, you know, it's just maybe even being deeper in your observation of just your relationships and the people in your life. That also came out very clearly in the book. So it's almost like this space allowed you to see yourself and life more.
Yeah. And I think what that showed me was that this winter had been caused by me running away from my previous winter, which was kind of early motherhood, when I felt like the world would never acknowledge me again. You know, like I felt like I'd kind of dropped out of all existence, and I'd never get a fold. And so I'd kind of gone completely the opposite direction and just tried to be really important to everyone and thought I was really vital, and I had to be solving everybody's problems, and I had to be kind of central to everything. And surprise, surprise, I couldn't do that. You know, like that will come as a surprise to absolutely no one. You know, and I'd caused the next winter by the fear that still lingered from the last one. And so, in that space, I had to really look in the eye my terror of being nothing, and I was nothing in that space. You know, that's what happens when we're wintering. For a while, we're not anything, and that, you know, that actually is full of possibility ultimately, because that's the space we remake ourselves and remake the lives that we need to live now, rather than the life that we maybe once dreamed of that hasn't quite worked out for us.
Yeah, no, wow. When you said that, I was nothing. Now, being somebody that meditates, and I'll talk about that in a second, because you actually talk about praying earthbound, you know, being someone that meditates, and actually I've read a couple of Joe Dispenza's books, and he talks about becoming nothing, right? And it's not about you being less than or any of that. It's really about just acknowledging that you are a being that's having an earthly experience, and that everything that you've put on are all labels. So ultimately, if you can return to that space of nothingness, which is how we are, like when we're babies, we don't care about what we don't even know what our names are. It doesn't matter, right? Babies are a great example of being nothing, you know? But when I hear it, like my stomach feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, I get that. And I mean, I'm, you know, I was about to say, I'm out the other side of that phase now, and I now see being nothing as actually quite appealing. As you say, it's that wonderful blank slate, but also nothing and everything are more or less the same when you start to think of it that way. You know, you are part of a common humanity rather than an individual that has to fight their way to the top. And for me, that's a really comforting thought. But it's also like, it's what change feels like too, I think. It's what real fundamental change feels like. And that's, I mean, even good change, I think, is quite painful, because you have to let go of your attachment to your old life, like everything that you believe you were and are, and everything you thought you wanted and maybe don't anymore, or maybe you're finding new things you want and you can't quite accept them yet, or maybe you're just letting go of the idea of control altogether. But that nothingness is a whirlwind, isn't it? It's not quiet, it's the eye of a storm.
Yes, and I think one of the things I'm experiencing now, and I believe that before I read the book, I was calling it my personal pandemic, because pandemic is such a hot word. And I feel, people, while all persons are in the midst of experiencing this global pandemic, we are also having our own personal pandemics, right? That
Yeah.
your own individual life doesn't stop. You still have the stuff that you have to deal with. That's going to be your stuff. And I've been going through quite a bit of transition desire. And that's coming from my creative side. What started out to be almost at war with my corporate side.
Interesting.
And wanting to, first I thought, I hate corporate now. No, I love corporate world, right? I thrived in those long, crazy hours, right? But over the last 3 years, I've just stepped into something I didn't know existed within me that feels more on purpose. And it's calling, it's tugging, and I have no idea how to do this, right? So I feel myself in a winter, even though it's interesting because I'm really enjoying my life in this moment, but that space of where do I want to spend the majority of my time, because I spend quite a bit of time working.
Yeah.
Can I really step into something else? Or, do I want to step into something that I'm paid for? I just want to release having to be paid for any kind of work and just work when I want and write when I want and do, and how do I step into that? Maybe I should just do nothing for a while. And, oh my God, I can't do nothing. It's like, so yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, that, isn't it? I mean, in a way, though, you saying that it's a wintering that's happening while you're enjoying your life, that I think that's really interesting, because to me that says that you've got the hang of this wintering business a bit, like you can manage that sort of wide open space alongside everything actually being okay, because you're accepting it, you're integrating it, you're okay with it happening, you're okay with that change, and you're okay with that question, like, okay, I'm being asked to do something else now. How do I even begin to approach this? Like, what is this? What is the question? And what is the answer? I mean, may we all be as comfortable with that question, because actually it's asked of us over and over again. And, there are different ways of responding it, and we can let go of our sense of control and just go with it and think about what the next step is. And it's only got to be one next step towards it. And being allowed to make mistakes within that's so important too. You might not get it right first time. I mean, I've been going through a similar process, I think, this year. I mean, I know I hate the corporate world. I mean, that has been abundantly clear to me. I've always loved working for myself, but I realized early this year, and do you know where I realized it from? Was listening to Rachel Rogers' podcast, who, I don't know if you listen to her, but she just talks a whole load of sense about, making a living. And she made me really think about how I have grown up connecting the hours I work with the money I earn.
Right.
And I have been working very hard this year to dislocate those two ideas, that making money and sitting for X hours in front of my desk, and they don't have to be related in any way, and I'm allowed to target making money in a shorter space of time than 9 to 5, so that I can get on with the creative stuff outside of that time.
Yes, I need that episode, because that
episode is amazing.
That's exactly what I want. Exactly.
Yeah. I will find. I have it bookmarked. I will send it to you after the podcast. It's great.
Please. Yes. No, that's epic. And one of the things that I think you just said to me about just being with it, right? It doesn't mean that you're not going to have the meltdowns. That's actually how I know I'm in a winter space, because I have these meltdowns. Now, what's great about meltdown now versus meltdown 10 years ago when I had cancer is that I know what it looks like, and I ask for support a bit sooner. So I'm seeing my therapist, my partner's a coach, so I'm making sure that we do coaching sessions, because it's not easy to coach a coach, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm going to him for coaching, he's like, okay, let me get my head on, because he knows I'm going to be telling him the same, putting back at him the same things he's putting to me. So I put the things in place. I start to listen to my Wayne Dyer. I turn it up a little bit more, or I'm finding Abraham Hicks that make me feel more alive and make me feel like I want to focus on the things that feel good. So I'm not in the gut of the meltdown for these extended periods of time. Yeah. I recognize that I'm there because I'm finding my way.
Right. And you're allowed to seek comfort during that process. I think that's so important, that you look for your guides, like Wayne Dyer or, Rachel Rodgers, whoever it is you turn to for the information you need. And I think there's a big thing for me about kind of consciously calming my nervous system when it's jangling, so like for me, I swim in cold water because that just takes everything out of me. It takes all of the kind of heat out of everything for me, and I find it massively helpful. But I know loads of people for whom like sitting in a sauna would be a better approach to that. Or like I always carry a little bottle of peppermint oil in my bag and a handkerchief, so that when my head is going that kind of infinite possibility is happening in my head, just having a little sniff of some peppermint oil can be enough just to calm everything down for a while. And I think it's really important to allow yourself to actively soothe, like we would a child. You'd pick up a baby who was crying and jiggle them a bit and stroke them and talk to them gently. And I think adults need that too. We need to allow ourselves to do that.
No, that's absolutely true. I had a question that kind of evolved out of some of the experiences that you had or expressed in the book, kind of linked back to meditation and to your visit to Stonehenge and the Santa Lucia experience that you had. And I wanted to talk about the connection between wintering and our spiritual side. Do you think that wintering is really about getting back to who we truly are in a spiritual sense?
I think if you can engage with whatever spiritual sense you have, during your wintering, I think it can massively help. And for me, I feel like I've wintered until I can engage with a spiritual sense. It's something I've really struggled with. I wasn't brought up in any kind of spiritual tradition. And it doesn't come naturally to me. It's not part of my habits in any way, or it's not something that I grew up thinking I needed, but I've learned to need it as an adult. Yeah. And so in the book, I wrote about, visiting Stonehenge for the midwinter festivities, which happen every year. And they're quite random, that there's no one group or belief that lays claim to Stonehenge at midwinter. And so you get this massive gathering of kind of various pagan groups or just interested bystanders or people that want to party, and they all come to be at this, at this incredible moment where the sun rises through the middle of Stonehenge at the morning after the longest day. So it's the return of the light. And I was really moved by that. Like I didn't have any belief to bring there. But then I realized that it was enough to believe in the changing of the seasons and to know that the reassurance of that life carries on despite me and my kind of pig-headedness about not having any spiritual beliefs. And that led me to really think, I've been a meditator for a long time too. And it led me really really strongly to think about, how I pray and how I worship and how I find that spiritual space that gives me that sense of wonder in the world and that sense of comfort and reassurance and continuity, and that sense of smallness of there being stuff that's much bigger than I am. That's a very beautiful thing to have, I think.
No, absolutely. I actually love what you said about space of wonder, because I don't believe as humans we step into that very much. It's similar to one of my favorite lines in Eat, Pray, Love was when Elizabeth Gilbert said that she wanted to have something to marvel at.
Right.
And the same kind of thing, where you're seeking just that little bit of magic in your everyday experience. And we're almost, when we step into adulting, it's almost like it doesn't exist anymore. It's folly, it's child's things like that. And I find that when I'm at my happiest, that's how I feel. I see nature, I experience things in a different level of brightness and color. It's like the world in Technicolor almost. It's just such a wonderful, wonder-filled experience. And I believe that when you have had a really hard winter, you tend to welcome that. More.
Yeah, well, it's almost like it peels a layer of skin off you and you're more sensitive. You start paying attention, and then you get that real sense of contact with things that bring you wonder and awe.
Yes.
And funnily enough, I've been writing recently about, like, because I think when we think about awe, we think about big things, seeing a mountain or a vast ocean, or, awe is this massive, massive experience. But I think I'm really interested in small moments of awe as well. The awe you feel when you spot a ladybird crawling on your sleeve, the awe that you feel when you see a beautiful flower. It's fleeting and it's small, but I think those moments of contact are really heightened when we're wintering. I think we ignore a whole lot of stuff when times are good, and it's one of the things to cherish in a winter.
Absolutely. You're so right. And even just this conversation, I think, is hopefully helpful to persons out there, women who are listening, who may be in the midst of their winter, or if you're like me, running from yours.
Surely not.
In recognizing that this is an opportunity for you to experience life at a greater level. So I highly recommend the book, guys. You got to get it. What are you doing now? What's your current project? Tell me about your virtual book tour and all the stuff.
Yeah, so the book has just come out in the States. It came out in the UK back in February, and so I've waited a long time for it to come out in America, and it's been amazing. The reception has been incredible. I can tell you this because the podcast will go out, so it won't be a secret by the time I tell you it, but it has hit the charts this week at number 10.
Oh,
so yeah, I know. It's amazing. I am one ahead in the charts of Dolly Parton, which, honestly, Dolly, sorry, but, sacrifices have to be made. So excited. The things that run through your mind when you see your book in the charts, not like my book's in the charts, but there's Michelle Obama 2 spots below me. Wow,
yeah. Like, I see you. Do you see me? I doubt it. Anyway, sorry. The idea that Michelle Obama might have glanced across my name was just incredibly exciting. So I've for the last, 2 months, I have been really busy promoting the book. I've been writing articles, I've been doing interviews, I've been talking to people, and it's been really lovely. I've had just the loveliest time. When this is over, I'm going to have a nice quiet Christmas, and then I return to writing my next book, which is a book about humility. Actually, a lot of the stuff we've talked about today really chimes to the book, about the value of feeling small, and how humility is something that we need to bring back as a virtue, because I think that we've talked a lot about making ourselves bigger and getting on top of other people in the last few years, and I think it's time to think about the power of small and quiet and gentle. Yeah,
so that's my next project.
And that, I think humility aligns more with our beingness. Exactly. I have a lot of focus that I place on my work around being versus doing.
Oh yes, I write about being versus doing too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's extremely relevant for women working in corporate, because we thrive on our beingness. We're creators naturally. Nature gave us wombs. Like, it's just whether you're having kids or not, that's just how you are made up. And it really is a gift to be able to tap into that side of ourselves. And I believe that that humility journey allows us to step into our beingness. And once you can do that, then you're better at doing.
And yeah, into our actual power, I think, in lots of ways. I've got a quote from Nelson Mandela at the very beginning of the book, who talked about how humility was so important to him, not just because it kind of keeps him in contact with who he is and what his real mission is, or who he was, sorry, I'm making it sound like he's still walking this earth, and unfortunately not. But also he talked about how his humility allowed others to accept his ideas, that he was able to help people to make the change that was absolutely vital and necessary, and that he always knew was important, but the way he positioned himself was very deliberate. And I'd never realized that. I just always thought, oh, what a clearly naturally gentle man, but actually he knew how powerful his gentleness was, and that for me is really inspiring.
Good. That's really good. No, I love that. This has been such an amazing conversation. I can't be talking for like 40, 50 minutes already. It's crazy. Okay, so so you said next for you is easy Christmas, just chilling with the fam.
Nice and quiet, yeah.
And then back to writing. What's that journey like? I love writing, and I started writing as well when I was young, more present to it as a teenager, short stories, poems, a lot of poems. I actually have poems in my memoir.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. So yeah.
And now I have like books in me. I have books that I've started, but writing is work. And it takes dedicated, focused time. And I have not honored that within myself since writing my memoir. And I really feel that pull more than anything else. I feel a big pull towards my next book. And I wondered what it's like to be a writer all the time.
Do you know what? I think it doesn't feel like being a writer all the time, in a funny kind of way. As I say, I mean, I do a lot of promotional stuff, but also I have to break up the writing. I find it overwhelming after a little while. Like my head empties, and I do know some writers who will literally sit down and write 4,000 words a day until they have a book, but I am not that writer. I need a lot of replenishing, and I need to just do other stuff. One of the things I have started this year, partly in response to that, is I've opened up my own online writing school. And I absolutely love teaching and coaching writers. I just find it so satisfying, and it always gives me loads back. Like it makes me articulate the way I think and what I do, and therefore I learn how to do it better. Nice. So I'll be dividing my time between working with my writing mentees and hopefully some nice deep research. I've really struggled with that this year. The world has been so busy. I've had my son at home a lot because of the pandemic. I've been running around everywhere, or it feels like running around everywhere, but actually not being able to leave the house.
I get it.
Yeah. And I think what I really need now is a period of deep research, like some library time, which I love, and some quiet time buried in my books. But yeah, punctuated with a little teaching, because I miss it if I don't have it, definitely.
That's nice. Now, in your writing class, is there a particular genre that you teach towards, or can everybody just roll on in?
Yeah, I have two courses. I have one course that I don't actually teach, but that's downloadable, that's about wintering for writers, so helping writers that are in those kind of dips, because that's so common for writers, and I wanted to help. But I teach creative nonfiction, so I have a course about writing, like mainly memoir, but also people who are writing, like, I don't know, narrative history, or finding creative approaches to talking about political issues, or whatever it is. So it's quite, it's quite close to my practice that I teach. I don't think there's many people that teach that stuff, and I want to really think about how you tell true stories but creatively, and how you capture life while, like, protecting yourself, while keeping it feeling kind of narrative enough, like having the story have a drive, how you create rich environments in that kind of world when you're writing it. And so yeah, that's what I specialize in.
No, that's really good. I was telling, because my partner started reading when the book got here.
Okay.
He started reading it before I did. And I was like, why are you reading my book? Like, it's my book. And he's like, oh, I wanted to see her writing style. And you have a very clear style here. Like,
right.
So I took it from him. And he continued reading. And so he asked me, because he knows I'm doing this interview this morning. And he was like, what else did you discover about her in the book? And I was like, well, I discovered that I felt like I was with her in all her experiences, because like I could picture all of the environments that you were in. Like I was So you're very gifted at doing that. And it's something that my editors had me go back through my book.
Interesting. Yeah.
To do. And I don't even think I did it as well as you did. Like, I mean, literally, like, I thought that was really well done. So I think your course would be a great way to learn how to do
Yeah, we do quite a lot of work on stripping out distance, like the distance we put between us and the reader, and how we often do that to protect ourselves because we feel, nervous about letting people in too far.
Yes.
And we think a lot about how to control that, like how you can give away moments, but also keep whatever you need to keep back for yourself.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about that, actually. It's interesting.
Absolutely. Well, I think you're doing great work. I'm really excited. I love that you actually have Elizabeth Gilbert giving you.
I know.
That's fantastic.
It's amazing.
Really great. When I wrote 5-Year Love Affair, I was clear that this is going to be the Eat, Pray, Love for Black women.
Oh, wow.
I haven't quite realized.
Yeah.
Congratulations again, and congratulations on hitting the chart.
Thank you.
On getting that spot. I think that's really great. A great aspiration for lots of others out there who are on their writer's journey. And I have one last question that I ask all my guests. If you had one piece of advice or one quote or one thing that has been impactful for you in any area of your life, whether it's your boardroom, which is of course clearly your writing world, a bedroom, which is your bliss world, which is your world with your partner and your child or any of your family members, and then your bliss space, which is where you're talking about escaping and finding time for yourself, or maybe all three spaces, what would that one piece of advice or that one sharing be? I think
my life has been a long process of learning not to take other people's advice, actually. Like, because I've been learning all my life to trust my gut, and to trust my gut to tell me what I want and what I need. And so much advice that I've always had has contradicted that directly. And actually, my kind of middle years, I'm 43 now, I don't listen to a word anyone else tells me. And things get better when you start doing that. Like when you start really noticing what it is that makes you happy and what makes you tick and how you want to do stuff. Because even if you find success doing it a way that you're not comfortable with, that success is not sustainable. You can't do that. It's not that you're incapable of it. It's just that you can't sustain that. You'll be unhappy. Things will crash. And so, yeah, my advice is don't listen to my advice, but listen to my advice to follow your gut.
Oh, I love that. That's good. That's very good. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining the Balanced Lady Boss Show, Catherine. I really appreciate what you've shared with us today. And I'm highly recommending Catherine's book, Wintering. In particular, during this time, it will teach you to flourish when life becomes frozen. So thank you so much. Thank you.